It's okay. Whatever. Okay, so now it takes a while to get on the regular Facebook. Okay, done.
The webinar is now live streaming on Facebook. It says on Zoom. Hello, everyone.
Okay. Let me get the, what happened to the?
So you are live, Anne-Marie. Welcome to those who are joining us to Tijuana River Action Month, to 10 years of TRAM. We're going to go ahead and pull up the slide deck. And in a moment, Anne-Marie Tipton will introduce our wonderful guests.
Slide deck went away. Okay, we'll get it. Sorry, folks. We'll be there in a second. Okay, here we go. All righty, yay. Welcome everybody to 10 years of Tijuana River Action Month. This is the first of 4 in a series of webinars that we're doing, and I'm really pleased to have with me Mayor Pro Tem Paloma Aguirre from Imperial Beach and former Community Outreach Coordinator Danielle Murphy. So let me just tell you a little bit about them. Paloma Aguirre.
Hold on, Anne-Marie. Stop.
Oh, wait, we're waiting for
I'm
TRAM.
going to share to the TRAM page.
Sorry about that, guys. Got too excited. We're waiting to sharing to Tijuana River Action.
Looks like you are, though, on the Tijuana Estuary page, and I see the slide deck, so that's good.
Okay.
Hold on.
We wanted to share to both folks, so we're sharing the Tijuana River Action Network now. Share to both folks. Are we good?
All right, it pressed share, so it should be up live. And yes, it is live on both pages.
Thank you, Lorena. I appreciate that. That was Lorena Wonderlara, our Assistant Reserve Manager, helping behind the scenes. And now that we're talking about logistics, before I introduce our speakers, what we're going to do tonight is, if you have any questions, Ana Aguirre is going to be monitoring Tijuana River Action Network's Facebook page, and Lorena Wonderlara will be monitoring the Tijuana Estuary Facebook page. So if you have a question, please type in your question, and they will. We're pretty casual. I think Paloma and Danielle, you're pretty loose about questions. If some comes up, we're good. Just let us know. That's cool. Okay, awesome. So if you have a question as we're going along, they're thinking back for a long time ago. These are the founders, some of the founders of Tijuana River Action Month. It's been a long time. This is actually the 11th year, so hopefully they remember things. So Paloma Aguirre serves as the Mayor Pro Tem for the city of Imperial Beach, and she is the first person in her family to graduate college. She went to UCSD, she got a BA in psychology, and then she got a certificate in nonprofit management from the Brandman University, and then she actually got a master's in advanced studies in marine biodiversity and conservation from Scripps Institute of Oceanography. Dang, she's got a lot of background. That's amazing. She's currently the Senior Program Officer for the Environment for the International Community Foundation, where she is responsible for overseeing environmental projects in Mexico and Latin America. In 2006, she joined Wild Coast, where she became the U.S.-Mexico Border Director, leading efforts to conserve 79,000 acres of coastal marine and island ecosystems in the San Diego-Tijuana border region. And she left Wild Coast in 2016. She was a NOAA Sea Grant NOS Fellow for U.S. Senator Cory Booker. assisting him in drafting, passing bills to reduce trash in our oceans and improve math and science skills in minorities. She was a co-founder of Tijuana River Action Network, like I said, and because of that and the work she did, she was named Woman of the Year by Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez for that work. In her spare time, she likes to body surfing, bodyboarding, spending time with her husband and her 2 doggies who were just barking not too long ago. So welcome, Paloma. Thank you so much for being with us. And our second speaker is Danielle Murphy, former Community Outreach Coordinator at the Tijuana River National Estuarine Research Reserve. She has more than 15 years experience in nonprofits in higher education. She is passionate about relationship building and engaging citizens, especially youth, in their communities. Danielle is a home educator for her 6-year-old son and split her time between San Diego and the Mojave Desert. In her 5 years when she was with us at the Tijuana Estuary, she coordinated volunteer programs in education, research, and stewardship, and fostered relationships with grassroots community groups and nonprofits from the US and Mexico to improve cross-border collaboration. The community outreach program engaged more than 3,000 volunteers, improved more than 12 acres of habitat, and removed more than 10 tons of trash from the Tijuana River Valley and Estuary. And Danielle secured 100% of program funding through grants and donations. Prior to joining here, she was Senior Campaign Manager of Development and Special Events at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Marketing Director at Kids Corps, and Admissions Advisor at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising and Community Relations at Plattsburgh State University of New York when she was way back east. So Paloma and Danielle, before you get started, I want to show everybody what you have to look forward to. So this is the first of 4 stops on our virtual tours. And you can see that there's little stars with different colors. So this is the first one on September 17th, talking about the history between 2010 and 2019 of Tijuana River Action Month. The next one, next week, we get to hear from Stephen Wright from Four Walls, talking about repurposing trash and all the work that he's done with that, especially down at Borderfield State Park. On October 1st, you get to hear from the reserve manager, Chris Peregrine, and the research coordinator, Jeff Crooks, about our 3-pronged approach for protecting wetlands. And then the last week, October 8th, it's gonna be, I'm gonna go and take an old presentation out of my shared drive and talk about the history of Borderfield State Park, which is a very, very amazing history, very unique and interesting history. So that's how we're gonna, that's our last stop of the tour, which would be down at Borderfield State Park. And so it should be some fun times. And just so you know, there's also lunchtime lives every Tuesday at noon starting next week, and for 3 times in a row. And then there's going to be National Public Lands Day on Friday the 25th with Fish and Wildlife Ranger Debbie Good. So there's all kinds of stuff happening. And then look at our Facebook page or our website to learn more about the 26th, which is how we're doing a kind of like a in your neighborhood coastal cleanup day. So stay tuned for all those things. All that stuff is available, especially on the TRAM and the Tijuana Estuary. There's a special separate events, and then also on the TRAM, there's so many events in Mexico that I didn't even mention. That it's just amazing. So there's so many. So please look at both of those places for what's coming up this next month or so. So thank you so much. So let me go, and you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So now Danielle and Paloma worked it all out, and mostly it's going to be them presenting on the last 10 years of Tijuana River Action. Go for it.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I started to get a little bit nostalgic, just, remembering our days working together. Danielle and I were 2/3 of the co-founders of Tijuana River Action Month and the Action Network. The third person is actually now married to Danielle. So it had a very happy ending. I hope you don't mind me sharing that. But so anyways, so today we're going to talk about the history of TRAM and how that began. And back when I was with Wild Coast, it's an environmental conservation organization based here in Imperial Beach, pretty close to the Tijuana River Estuary Research Reserve. Danielle, Dan Murphy, and myself, Dan Murphy used to work for Surfrider San Diego. We came together and wanted to kind of unify our efforts and do it in a cohesive way. So that's kind of where the whole idea behind this started. But why? We really began it because there are a lot of threats to the sensitive habitat and the ecologically valuable estuary of the Tijuana River. The threats are quite great. We have invasive species. We have hundreds of thousands of pounds of trash that are carried by the Tijuana River from Mexico into the US that are deposited into the estuary and ultimately into the ocean. This area is very important. It's because it's a stop in the flyway of the Pacific Flyway for over 300 bird species, and it has incredible value. So every time it rains, because we share a watershed with Mexico, it's about 1,800 square miles. 3/4 of it are in Mexico, 1/4 in the US. Every time it rains, that river flows and can carry all of these pollutants downstream and impact this very important, ecologically important area.
All right, thanks Paloma. Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Murphy. Are you able to see me, Paloma?
Yes.
Okay. So as Paloma said, my now husband, Dan Murphy, and I, and Paloma sat down, we talked about the ways that we were all doing similar events or working towards these cleanups, these restoration events. And what would happen is sometimes our events would have to be canceled because we would have a heavy rainfall, and due to sewage in the river valley, we couldn't have visitors on the estuary for a few days. Also during bird nesting season, we wanted to make sure we were giving that space and that time to especially our endangered and threatened bird species. And that can go into September, early September. So that's why we decided to work together efficiently, effectively, join forces, make a huge impact. Really, that kind of sweet spot of time between mid-September and mid-October is when we could really get in there, join all of our volunteers together and really just hit the ground running and get a lot of work done. So that was why we decided to make this time, and I know it's not just a month, it's mid-September through mid-October, but that's the reason why those dates were chosen.
Just tell me when you want me to forward the slides.
Let's go ahead and go to the next one.
Okay. Ugh.
So in the meantime, in the past, oh, there it is, overlapping goals and activities within the watershed. So we found that a lot of different groups, for example, the Tijuana River Valley Equestrian Association did some cleanups to clear out some of the trails because the amount of trash is so high that it would completely cover some of these trails that they would use to, have give horseback rides. So they would, end up doing cleanups. And then we would be doing, Wild Coast would be doing their own cleanups, and the estuary would be doing their own. And we found that we were all working towards the same goal, and we were duplicating really efforts. So that's where the idea came about, to just all unite, all come together and do one big cleanup. But then the idea, like Danielle mentioned, was, well, why do we have to stop just at the one cleanup? Why don't we take advantage of that small window of opportunity after bird nesting season ends and before the rains start? Obviously, nobody wants to go anywhere near any area that's wet because of the pollution related to sewage that is carried by the Tijuana River. So that's why we joined forces. We sat down, like Danielle said, and we started working towards, this idea of Tijuana River Action Month.
So this was a great opportunity for us not only to work together, but to really learn from one another. We all had organizations that had their own missions. And so this was a great opportunity for us to find out what everyone was working towards, how we could use each other's skills and strengths and really mobilize our efforts. There was definitely a need for a shared understanding of the issues because everybody, brought their own set of expertise. And we all did have some different perspectives that were worth sharing with one another. So my position at the Tijuana River National Estuarine Research Reserve was somewhat unique in that I worked for the Southwest Wetlands Interpretive Association, also known as SWIA, who's the nonprofit partner of the reserve. So I was in this position of working for a nonprofit, but also managed by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, California State Parks, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. So that gave me an opportunity to present the information from these agencies to the other nonprofits that we were working with and other community groups. So everyone could, again, better understand why it was so important to use this window of time to really make our greatest impact. Next slide, please.
So just like Danielle said, for example, the estuary, they focus a lot on habitat restoration, wildlife protection. Wild Coast, its goal, its mission is to conserve coastal and marine ecosystems. So we were more concerned with, preventing the waste tires and the plastics from flowing out into the ocean and impacting wildlife, marine wildlife, and the ecosystem of the coast. So we started to think, okay, so what other groups are doing this type of work that is within this nexus of conservation and wanting to, address some of the threats that we've been talking about. So we kind of brainstormed and talked and thought about reaching out to some groups. So in the beginning, we reached out to Border Encuentro, which is led by Dan Watman. Their focus has always been to increase access to Friendship Park and to build bridges across the border, despite the border wall being there over at Borderfield State Park. So we invited Border Encuentro, and then I remember I discovered Tijuana Calidad de Vida, which is like a really dynamic young group of young professionals with a focus on urban sustainability and urban planning, and we invited them to come and join us. And then I Love a Clean San Diego has a very long history of doing cleanups during Coastal Cleanup Day, which is also in September, and they have multiple sites all throughout the county. So we're like, we need to engage them as well. And then we invited Proyecto Fronterizo de Educación Ambiental, which is a very well-known, very well-respected nonprofit based in Tijuana that does massive cleanups, creeks, river, beach cleanups, and water quality testing. So we convened a meeting and invited these groups, in addition to some other ones that are on the next slide.
So in addition, San Diego Audubon Society was one of the organizations. Also San Diego Coastkeeper, who we were also partnering with to do water quality testing. And we had citizen scientists, so volunteers helping with that. The Southwest Wetlands Interpretive Association, who, like I said, is already a partner of the reserve. Surfrider San Diego, who had started a campaign specifically in the Tijuana River Valley called No BS, No Border Sewage Coalition. Of course, us at the reserve, and Wild Coast.
Next slide. So when we came together, we decided, okay, what is this going to look like? It needs to be beyond just cleanups, beyond just us coming together and sharing our woes. So we saw it as an opportunity to engage the maximum amount of people. We saw it as a educational tool for a lot of local schools. For example, Southwest High, Mar Vista High. They're all so close to the estuary, so close to the Tijuana River Valley. Yet a lot of these students had no idea that on an annual basis, hundreds of thousands of pounds of plastics came across the border and were, impacting all of these sensitive areas. So we saw it as an opportunity to raise awareness, raise the issue, not just here locally, but beyond, like all across the county. So we committed to mobilizing the maximum amount of people, and also as an opportunity to celebrate all of these different, efforts that all these different groups have been working on, so that they could also, get recognition for the amazing work that a lot of these nonprofits have been doing for over many years.
And in addition to the nonprofits that had been working in that area, so many public and private agencies who were investing in these events that we were doing, also businesses who gave funding, gave products, supplied massive numbers of volunteers, and whatever they could. So we wanted to make sure that these efforts were being recognized, and that we could, like Paloma said, just everyone and all of our resources coming together and to show what a huge impact we could make. Next slide.
All right, so this is actually our very, very first poster that we designed. I remember we made a point to show the two figures there. One has a cap that reads SD, and then the t-shirt reads TJ, showing people cleaning up tires and trash, and obviously the backdrop of the estuary. We show at the bottom all of the partners that were either hosting or co-hosting a cleanup or an educational event, as well as some of the funders. Back then, Cal Recycle supported very much the paying of the tire hauling. For example, all the tires that were plucked out of the river were hauled away and paid by them. The county supported some of these efforts, as well as the City of San Diego Stormwater Department, in addition to the investment of staff time of all of these organizations that you're seeing. I don't know if you want to add any more for that, Danielle. I don't know.
That's good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so our very first year was focused on cleanups, and that was sort of a common activity amongst all of our groups and a great way to rally together. Next slide, please. So here is a
I remember
typical site of what the cleanup areas looked like. So you'll see lots of plastic, lots of strange objects floating out. So in addition to tires, you might find some creepy baby dolls. This was in Borderfield State Park in the Willow Basin that first year. Next slide.
This is at the estuary. Yeah, that's at the visitor center, right? Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's a restoration planting event. So, well, I'll let you take that because I know that was your project.
So we started to grow from doing all cleanup events to doing additional educational events and restoration events. So here's an example of a volunteer day, which may have started with some invasive plant removal and then putting in some native plants. And we always had education staff around or volunteers to help educate the volunteers during these events. Next slide, please.
Well, yeah, and then after the first year, the second year, we decided, well, let's turn up the volume and just really celebrate all of the collective efforts from all the different activities over the entire Tijuana River Action Month. And this was at Wild Willows Farm, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So it was truly just like such a collaborative effort where, you know, folks like Dan and Surfrider would be like, hey, I have a connection with this pizzeria or this, you know, winery or you know, 91X even sometimes would come down and just play music. So we did collectively like just a bunch of sponsors that would help celebrate all of the volunteers that work so hard during the entire month. Next slide. Thank you.
Okay, here's another cleanup photo. So the Tijuana River Valley is sort of notorious for its tires that wash over the border. And there's a history there of these tires starting in the US, being reused in Mexico, and then washing back over. So kind of how the circle happens. And so this was a huge effort every year to pull as many tires as we possibly could out of the river valley. I don't know, Paloma, if you have an idea of numbers.
So these tires, like Danielle said, they originate mostly in the US. They're exported through formal and informal mechanisms to Mexico because there's a high demand for used tires, semi-used tires in Baja California, because it's cheaper for them to bring them in from the US than from the mainland. So they have, you know, an average span of life left, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then the disposal of waste tires in Tijuana is a little bit less strict than it is here because of just limited resources and limited capacity. So a lot of people use them as informal like building blocks. So if any of you have seen south of the border, there's a very like steep difference in geography. It's on average 300 feet above sea level. So a lot of folks use these, either dispose of the tires in canyons and ravines, or can use them as building blocks to build like retainers, wall retainers or staircases. So unfortunately, when it rains, they do all wash down, and like any watershed, they'll all wash into the one main body of water, which is the Tijuana River, and then come across the US. And then they're deposited all throughout the Tijuana River Valley. Now that's really concerning because it's beyond just an issue of aesthetic, but it's also an issue of access to open recreational space. Like I was mentioning earlier, it litters a lot of the recreational trails, as many of us know who live in South San Diego, South County has one of the most limited acres per person of open recreational space. So it becomes an issue of access to open space, and it also becomes an issue of environmental impact because they can leach these heavy metals and other types of chemicals into the soils and into like adjacent plants. And then the most, I think, concerning issue that has always been very concerning to me is a public health threat, because they can collect sewage polluted water, stagnant water, and they can breed mosquitoes and other types of vermin. So that has always been a concern. So that's why these efforts to just pluck them out, and especially prevent them from going into the ocean, because once they reach the ocean, there's a whole different slew of potential impacts that they could have. So we're talking about this. This picture doesn't really do justice to how massive that problem is, but at any given time, there were times where we would fill 40-yard rollaway bins completely with tires. We're talking about sometimes 300, 400 tires if we had the volunteer capacity to pluck all of them. But it was really cool because, you know, you have people just working, like 4 or 5 people working on digging out a tire from the sediment, and you know, plucking it out and just, you know, succeeding in that. So it's good collaborative effort. Next slide, please.
So here's a public tour that we did a little more recently as part of TRAM. So one of the goals and efforts is education. And people are curious about the river valley. They hear about it. They hear about sometimes the dirty stuff. So it's important to show all the sides of the estuary and what it has to offer. We've done several tours, Paloma and I, on both sides of the border throughout the watershed for various groups, volunteer groups, agencies, and there's a lot to cover.
Yeah, and it's a great educational opportunity. For example, we had delegations from the California, Baja California Committee of the Senate, for example, led by Senator Ben Wessel back then. He would bring his colleagues in the Senate that may not be from the region, but may have to decide on budgetary, you know, legislation that could benefit that did benefit the Tijuana River Valley, but they may have not known of the area itself. So they would come down in delegations and just tour the area and really see it firsthand. And then, you know, interested folks, like just, you know, regular people that may have not known about the issue or may not even know that there's this huge valley that also offers these recreational opportunities, from bird watching to horseback riding to riding your mountain bike. I mean, it's really, it's an oasis really of beautiful natural habitat that we have that is at the nexus of 2 of the most metropolitan rich areas in the entire border region, right? We have the city of Tijuana, which is almost 2 million people, and then the city of San Diego and South County, where you would never imagine that there's this magical place in the Tijuana River Valley, just right in the middle of it all.
And as Anne Marie mentioned, she'll be doing a presentation at the end of the month on Borderfield State Park. So definitely be sure to tune in for that and hear the rich history there.
And the wonderful wildlife that you get to see. I mean, I had only seen, for example, road runners in cartoons until I visited the Tijuana River Valley. And any given time you can be walking the river valley and see road runners, see, you know, blue jays and amazing like raptors, all kinds of wildlife that you get to see. And it's really incredible. Next slide, please.
Okay, so for some accomplishments, so this over the course of 10 years is really incredible for, especially for Paloma and I to see, having started this so long ago with just a couple of cleanups and a handful of volunteers, that in total there were 22,694 volunteers. And remember, this is just a handful of events in a short 4-week period of time over the last 10 years. And we touched on the number of tires that may have been removed in one cleanup event, and over this 10 years, just in this little window of time, almost 5,000 tires were removed. I mean, that is just amazing. And the tons of trash removed, 261. I think that oh, I had calculated what that was in pounds, and it was like, I don't remember now, like,
That's multiplied by 2, right? 261 times 2,000. 522,000
pounds.
And that's, as far as volunteers, if you multiply 22,694 times 3, because most of our events were 3 hours, that's 68,000 hours of volunteer time. That if the state had to pay those folks per hour, let's say average $20, that would have been over $1 million of cost. That because of the community's engagement, there were over $1 million of volunteer hours served that the community gave to this issue and to restore the Tijuana River, which is quite amazing.
Wow.
Next slide. Is there a next slide?
Yep.
So here was our first Tijuana River Action Month Coastal Cleanup Day. We would typically kick off the month with Coastal Cleanup Day. So this was end of September, and the Coastal Cleanup Day is sponsored by or organized by I Love a Clean San Diego. And it happens all throughout the coast. But we usually have various cleanup sites within the river valley and on both sides of the border. And so everyone received their free matching t-shirts, and there's usually some food and fun at the end of it as well. Next slide, please.
That's it.
That's it. Trip down memory lane.
That was amazing. And it's amazing. Thank you so much, Paloma and Danielle. And let's see if we can hear from, this is the time for questions and answers. And let's see if Anna or Lorena, do we have any questions on Facebook?
So there is a little bit of a lag time. So between when you guys are talking and when the questions will come through.
Okay.
But there was a question from Arturo Angeles asking about, and I did answer it on Facebook, but asking about if there would be a group cleanup this year or not because of COVID. So
thank you for raising that important question. Something we forgot to mention is that back in 2017, I believe, we did one of our last cleanups over by Dairy Mart Road, which is the point of the first blue star, basically. That's on this map where Dairy Mart Road is. And it was one of the first cleanups, so it was dry conditions. And we didn't know it at the time, but all of the co-hosts, we got really, really sick. I had to go to the emergency room because I had viral laryngitis. My colleagues from I Love a Clean San Diego were, bedridden for about a month. About a week, from what they shared with me. So we just became very concerned about, exposing volunteers to, unhealthy conditions. In the past, what we always operated on was, well, let's never put our volunteers in wet conditions, because we knew that if it's wet, it's sewage contaminated, there's a risk, definitely a health risk. But we had never had any impact from working in dry conditions until this cleanup. So we again came together, leadership at the estuary, all the leadership from all the different organizations, and we had a very honest conversation about, this whole effort, this decades-long effort, really, we had to revisit the why, and the why was always, it's an educational tool. It's an opportunity for us to raise awareness about the issue, to engage more people, and to highlight the efforts of everybody. So we we had to make a collective decision to suspend cleanups. And actually, I think Arturo Angeles was at one of those last ones, now that I remember. Arturo Angeles is a great partner and collaborator. He leads a nonprofit in Tijuana called Naturalus, which was key in helping pass the first plastic bag ban by the city of Tijuana in partnership with Ana Aguirre at the estuary. So that was our informal agreement, and we discussed, okay, well, what would be an alternative to the cleanups? So we started discussing the idea of, you know, continuing to use this as an educational tool, continuing to do the tours, but unfortunately no longer the cleanups. And right around that time is when I left, and you know, folks at the estuary continued the effort. But so, you know, COVID now I think is an additional, you know, kind of like an impediment, you know, to us doing any massive cleanups. But, you know, there's the other layer of volunteer safety related to just contaminated conditions that everybody was concerned about.
Yep. And if you go to cleanupday.org, you'll find out how to sign up for a cleanup in your own neighborhood. That's what we're focusing on this year, the 26th of September. So focusing on you working in your own neighborhood, because wherever you live in a watershed, and where the, you know, it's where all the water flows, and it's going to flow eventually to the ocean, right? So that's what we're focusing on now, individual families working on their own and signing up on cleanupday.org. And if you want more information about that, you could go to our Facebook page, or you could also go on I Love a Clean San Diego's Facebook page. They have a nice video describing the 11 different watersheds in the county and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna read a little bit from their website. So for this year, protecting our coast starts at your front door. The 36th Annual Coastal Cleanup Day encourages you to protect your happy place. Volunteers across San Diego County can sign up to clean up close to home so we all stay safe but make a positive impact for our environment. So that's all. Locally, we're promoting the 26th, but if you are eager to get out and clean up this weekend, California Coastal Cleanup Day through the Coastal Commission is the state partner that runs actually the worldwide International Coastal Cleanup Day. And they, you can clean up, and they have this great app that the Ocean Conservancy has put out called Clean Swell. And so you can actually collect data using your phone. I did it last weekend, and it works really well. And that way we can put we ask, well, why data? Because when you have those numbers, you can actually use that to advocate for laws to make a difference on that level.
Thank you, Lorena. That's great.
I am not seeing any more questions right now.
What about on your side, Anna? Is there anything on your side?
No, we don't have questions in TRAM.
Okay. Well, I just want, again, I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Paloma Aguirre from Imperial Beach and our former community outreach coordinator, Danielle Murphy. It's been great to see you. It's been great to hear from your inspirational vision. And I want to thank you for your ideas and your inspiration, and we just keep it. It's kind of a neat feeling, isn't it, to start something and you could see when you're not even doing it, it's still happening, right? So that just really shows what a wonderful vision that you had for working in this area. And we're the largest coastal wetland in Southern California. And I just gave a program to middle schoolers today all about it and talking about how it helps fight climate change and everything. So thank you so much, ladies. And thank you to Ana Aguirre, our binational liaison, who, as Paloma said, was instrumental in working with our partners to get Tijuana to ban plastic bags. and Lorena Waterlata, who is tirelessly working on Tijuana River Action Month, but all the Nelson Sloan Quarry, some not very interesting and sexy projects for some people, but really, really critical projects to help us restore the river valley. So thanks again. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. And please join us next week, same time, same station, 7 p.m. on the 24th, where you get to hear from Stephen Wright. And that's another inspirational speaker about how he and his partner, Waylon, they've actually repurposed trash, and it's going to be another great story. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, you can't miss that one. Don't miss next week. Stephen and Waylon are amazing. They've done some amazing projects and builds in Tijuana. They're going to have some really cool stories. So it was a pleasure being with you all and seeing you. And thank you for the invitation, Anna Marie.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Anne-Marie, for having us. It was nice to walk down memory lane. Great to see you all. And it's really exciting to see that this program still is going and the numbers keep growing, and to see all those volunteer efforts definitely makes my heart happy. So thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Night.
All right. Oh, we're still live.
We're still